Well, top of the morning to you. Welcome back to Timeless Steel. Jimmy here. Figured I'd go out here, take advantage of some free time and do a little YouTubing, work on my car, show you a few things that I've been doing. I'm gonna wire up my I-Booster today, I think. Figured there's probably a few of you who'd like to see how that's done. In the meantime, since you guys have been away, I've got my drift brake plumbed here. I ordered some more brake stuff. I'm hoping to have the whole brake system plumbed by this weekend, and that's really the point of this video, and I'll take you guys along for the ride. The dash is squared away. I went ahead and added a stack boost gauge because it's a time machine, and I feel like Doc Brown would have just thrown a gauge right on top of that center console there, so that's what I did. And I'm not going to finalize any of the wiring in this car for all of this stuff until I've got all of it roughly mocked up. So it's a mess in here. We got wires everywhere, but when it's all done, it'll be clean and tight and all that kind of stuff. So in the meantime, all right, Tesla I-Booster. They are awesome for swapped cars like mine. You can get them, I'm using a Gen 1, which is a Model S booster. Gen 2s are Model 3s and a bunch of other cars. Once I post this video, in the comment or in the description, I'll post all the part numbers and everything you need to wire this thing up. But all right, so there is your power requirements for a Gen 1 I-Booster. So as you're looking at it here, the red wire in spot 1 is a 10 to 12 gauge 40 amp fused power source. The black wire is a 10 to 12 gauge ground. The bottom left is a 5 volt 12 volt ignition, and that's in pin 17, and then pin 20 is a 5 volt 12 volt ignition. The 17 here is a 14 gauge. Spot 20 is a 20 to 22 gauge. I used 10, 14, and 20 gauge wires on mine. Now you need 4 different parts to get to this point where you're powering your booster, okay? Your 26 pin connector is a Moser Electronics part number 571-1-967-640-1. That's your 26 pin, which is the main Tesla I-Booster plug, okay? For your 10 to 12 gauge wires, you need these style electrical plugs. Those are Nexus part number 1-928-498-807. And for your 14 gauge power supply, you need these from Moser, part number 122, Q is in Quebec 25. And now everything else on the inside of this plug, including that power source at pin 20, is 20 to 22 gauge. And for all those, you need Nexus part number 1-928-498-705. Okay? Now for your little 4-way plug here that goes to the pedal sensor that you're not using because you're not running autopilot out of a Tesla, you need Moser part number 571-965-906-1 CT. So all said and done here, you need 4 different size electrical pins. So that's basically how you power the unit. Now the rest of the wires are just powered into this little guy here, which basically tricks the I-Booster into thinking that your autopilot is connected and that it sees the pedal. And that in a Tesla, the autopilot knows where the pedal is based off what this 4-way plug is seeing. Obviously this isn't a Tesla and I'm not running autopilot, and neither are you in your swap application, so all you're doing by wiring this into this plug is making the ECU and the brain of the unit think that it can see the pedal. Alright, so here it is. There's your basic wiring. So you got a 4-way plug, that's your pedal sensor. Get you some better light here. Okay, so pin 1, 10 to 12 gauge power supply, always on 40 amp fuse. pin 8, 10 to 12 gauge ground. Pin 17, 14 gauge to 16 gauge, 5 amp ignition. Pin 20, 20 to 22 gauge, 5 amp ignition. Your 4-way, so position 2 goes to pedal sensor 1. Position 8 goes to pedal sensor 3. Position 22 goes to pedal sensor 2. And position 23 goes to pedal sensor 4. Now on the back of this pedal sensor, I don't know if you can see that. Let me get some light on here. They're numbered, so you can't really screw it up. Each spot is numbered. Alright, so I went ahead and made myself a 4-gauge, not a 4-gauge, a 4-foot harness here, just so that I can plug this in and work on the wiring without being down inside there. Now there is a locking key that goes on this that locks it to the ECU. I've ordered that, I don't have it yet. And then you're going to want to seal the back of the wiring here so you don't get moisture in there. But for now we're just going to test fit everything, make sure I did it right. Alright, had to put the camera down there. But anyways, there you see the little 4-wire plug. That's a pedal sensor that has to be wired, that doesn't get used. That one locks in, has a weather pack in it. This one here needs a separate piece to lock in, which I'll link in the description. But here you can see my power wires. I have until I figure out where I want to run it, but now I can work with that harness instead of down inside here once I get them all connected, and that's pretty much it. So alright, I got some redneck engineering here. Before I do all this wiring, I want to make sure it works. Now mine wasn't working at first, and I figured out one of my pins, one of my 12-volt pins, wasn't quite seated. Now the way these plugs work is they have a piece of plastic that once you're done wiring, and you pop them in place and it locks all the wires in. Well, I thought I had popped it in place, but it didn't actually go all the way, and that's because one pin was kicked out, and which prevented it from working. Now when you first plug this thing in, you should hear it click. Listen, you hear that? Let's do it again. 1, 2, 3. So that's how you know it's getting power. And then if you just want a simple test inside the car, when you push the brake pedal in, it will slowly release itself. So ready? You can hear it. Sounds like Cyborg, Skynet, Terminator stuff. You also hear, you just hear that electric motor whirring sound. So it's working. Now I can de-redneck it and wire it properly. What up, everybody? It's another day. So since you've been gone, I went ahead and got my prototypes back from J. Merlin Machine that I made, all finished, powder coated, and spent some time shimming these calipers and making them fit. I did have to modify the DeLorean hubs a little bit, which if you're putting big brakes on like this, I think these discs are 11 3/4. You're either going to have to machine the caliper or machine the hub. There's no way around it. The good news is I did not have to take a lot of material out, and it wasn't in places of the hub that are prone to crack or anything like that. So I'll tell you. So I did get a whole bunch of parts in, and I think I left them in the house. So anyways, for now, I'm going to use this POR 15 kit here. These hubs are all beautiful and powder coated. My uncle did them. I don't want to take all this stuff apart. It gets to a point in a build where you just got to finish the car. If you keep trying to make everything perfect, it never gets done. So I'm going to finish the car. It's time to get on the road. So I want to put better than spray paint on there. So I'm going to give this little POR 15 caliper kit a try. It's high temp paint. It should go on a little thicker and be a little tougher than spray paint. Now I should be able to blend those spots back into the hub, and it'll all get covered up by the calipers and nobody ever know anyway. But mainly I'm building this car to drive. I want the corrosion protection. So Stick around and find out. I'm going to clean these hubs up with a little, I think I got this little guy from Eastwood, a little air-powered sander. I've got some 200 grit pucks. I'm gonna go ahead and make them smooth, make sure that's smooth, and then start painting, and I'll bring you guys along. If I had $1 million, I'd pay someone else to do this. Probably not. I enjoy doing this. All right, step one, smooth out my grinding. All right, I hit it with the air sander. You can see there. Now the goal here is to get rid of, you know, even if you're good with that die grinder, you get a little bit of potholing and like crater effect. So coming back in with that little air grinder kind of smooths everything out. And then the goal here is that when this is painted, to the untrained eye, it just looks like a stock hub. There's no crazy transitions. I smoothed everything out. So now we're gonna paint all these areas I scratched with this POR kit and blend it back into the powder coat. 3-step kit. First step, cleaner degreaser. Let's see here. Metal prep, which I imagine is just a very light strength etcher. And then it comes with the caliper paint and a rust preventative primer and 2 brushes. Now it says clean with a degreaser, 20 minutes of metal prep. Let that dry, 2 thin coats of the primer, and then I think it's 2 to 6 hours before you top coat it, and then 2 coats of the caliper paint. I think that takes 24 hours to cure. This kit claims it'll do 4 calipers. I don't believe it. And weak sauce POR. These gloves are meant for little people, and if you're gonna have 3 steps, 4 steps, why don't you include 4 pairs of gloves instead of 1? Just food for thought and stuff. All right, meow. Step 1, cleaner degreaser. Oh, son of a... I tell you what. Alrighty then. Let's just pour some of this all over a rag. Now normally I would just use some whatchamacallit, mineral spirits, or you know, stuff for welding. I can't, it's morning time. Alright, I'm not even awake yet. I don't know why I'm recording this video. But anyhow, clean the areas you want to paint with some appropriate cleaner degreaser. This comes with it, so I'm using it. Simple. Acetone, that's what I was trying to think of. Acetone. Alright, I have cleaned and I have degreased. So now I'm going to put some metal prep on, which this stuff is really meant for, you know, steel that hasn't been grinded on and cleaned, and it's got some spotchy pads on it and stuff like that. These are aluminum hubs. I'm just going to get this little foam brush wet here, and I'm pretty sure that you don't want to get this on paint because it's probably not friendly to paint. But I'm just going to dab like that dance from the 2000s. I'm just going to get it on the metal here. I think the instructions say to keep it wet for 20 minutes, so I'm sure this is just a light etch compound, and I'm sure it's not good for the powder coat around it, but I'm going to be blending this into the powder coat anyway with the paint, so if I hurt a little bit of it, it's okay. Alright, it's been about 20 minutes So now it says to rinse off the metal etch with some water and a dry cloth. It does say it eats paint and all that kind of stuff, so be careful. Got the rust preventative primer open. It says to stir with a foam brush. Seems common sense. And now I'm going to apply a coat of this primer very carefully because I don't feel like taping anything up. And it says to do 2 light coats. I'm going to just do a light coat on this side, bounce over to the other side, let this side flash for about 10 minutes. By the time I get done with the other side, come back over, put a second coat on this side, and then flip-flop back to the other side, do a second coat. Then I'm going to let that dry for 2 to 6 hours and then start putting the actual caliper paint on. And while I'm waiting for that to dry, I can move on to running the soft lines, and I'll bring you guys along for the ride. And if you get sick of waiting for the paint to dry, then I don't know, you can watch me paint these pretty little trees on these calipers. Pretty little trees. Pretty little trees. Listen to me, mouth breathe. It's a good time for everybody. Get nose surgery, they said it'll fix mouth breathing. It didn't. Still a mouth breather. My kid's a mouth breather. It's in the genes. Alright, so there you have it. That's what the primer looks like. And you can see I've painted a whole bunch of that area. But hopefully once I come back with the black, it'll all blend together and you won't see it. Alright. My opinion so far on this rusty metal primer is it sucks. Way too thin in my opinion. I mean, I've been constantly just trying to keep a fine line with it. I don't know if they made this stuff for actual rusty metal, but if you've got prepped metal surface, it goes on way too thin in my opinion, which is probably why they want you to use their etch, because it doesn't stick worth a damn without it. I don't know, maybe I'll eat my words when I am done, but alright, well, you guys have all been gallivanting or whatever it is you're doing. I'm on outfit number 2. And while this paint's been waiting to dry, I've been running all soft lines. You see all this stainless steel hard line. It was all the rear brake circuit on the car, a whole bunch of different pieces. With the drift brake and everything else, I decided to go with soft lines. Now they're all just hanging right now, and it's a mess under here because I haven't ran everything pretty yet, but anyhow, I got the lines ran back to the calipers, and once it's all mounted and I got my fasteners holding everything down, I'll show it to you. But I'm already kind of eating my words on this primer. It's only been drying now for, I don't know, 3 hours, and it definitely has the ceramic appearance and feel. If you were here looking at it and touching it, it looks and feels almost exactly like the powder coat. So if the black turns out like this and the finished product stays like this ceramic feel, I'm going to be pretty happy with it. It's just the primer when you're first putting it on is super thin. Also, while we're talking about stainless brake lines, they're a pain in the butt. Now when I first frame off this car, I did all stainless lines because I thought, oh, stainless steel, you know, I don't want to ever have to change them again. That is true. If you're going to do stainless brake lines though, they don't like being taken apart and put back together multiple times. They will leak, and if you're going to put the fittings together, I learned this trick from my neighbor Dennis. There's this Loctite stuff. Where did I put it? Right here. I gotta reset the shop after this video here. Loctite 567. You put it on the threads, it helps the stainless fittings from galling and it helps them seal better. But even with that stuff, you take those lines apart more than once or twice and you're gonna have leaking issues, which is why a lot of people hate stainless brake lines. I paid a lot of money for those, and at the time I didn't think I was gonna be putting a drift brake in the car, and then I decided to put a drift brake in the car and I had to change my whole setup. Then I put a Tesla I-Booster in the car. So I did a lot of things after I had already kind of restored the rolling chassis frame portion that are causing me to go back and ditch some things. But if you remember when I put the I-Booster in, I kinked those brake lines. So I'm redoing those brake lines, and I'm doing the whole rear circuit is soft lines, basically race car style for this drift brake. All 3 AN lines make life super simple. And I will say, I purchased DPI's rear soft line kit, and I'm actually going to be getting a couple of his forward lines because his prices are actually pretty competitive on these brake lines. But if you got a stock DeLorean, or even you're doing something crazy like mine and you're smart enough to adapt things, his brake line kit is phenomenal. Comes with all the little clamps to hold it to the frame. You got a tap and drill and all that kind of stuff. But man, for the price and the time savings for buying his kit, I absolutely wholeheartedly endorse that kit. I think if I was to do the next time I build one of these, I'll probably just buy his complete brake line kit, because it's well thought out, it's well engineered. All the lines are exactly the right lengths, plus a little bit of slop. And compared to the stock hardline system, I'm a big fan. So there's an endorsement. But all right, now I'm going to go ahead and paint these first coat of black.
King of the road, trailer for sailoring, man, trailer for sailoring, ain't got no cigarettes, but trailer for sailoring.
Well, I may be eating my words on this stuff, because man, you just got to take your time with it, and it's thin when you first apply it. But I think after this dries, it's so close to that powder coat that if I didn't tell you guys I painted those spots, you probably wouldn't even know. And this was my goal. You can see, remember, I ground some stuff in here and I ground some stuff up here, and I think once this is all dry, you'll never know. So pretty happy with that. All right, well, I think we're gonna call it for today. I want to take the family out, my daughter and my wife, and go to dinner, get out of the shop, enjoy Saturday. I wanted to be done with this brake system tomorrow, but I think probably Wednesday next week I'll get the parts, and I'll probably be pissed and I'll come out and start working on it that night. But stay with me, folks, and we'll get it done. And this right here, man, I can't tell you how much time I have in making a Wilwood caliper bolt to a DeLorean. But between me and Jay Murley Machine, we got it figured out, and it's gonna be pretty legit. Same calipers in all 4 corners, 11 3/4 inch discs on the back. I think the fronts are 11s. I don't remember. Those are 01 to 05 Miata Sport caliper, or Sport discs. I think the non-sports are 10.5 and the sports are 11 or 11, I think. I don't know. I'll look it up later. But well, top of the morning to you. Beautiful, muggy, rainy fall Tennessee morning. I'm starting to see leaves all over the grass. Can't believe summer's over already, but anyhow, I'll tell you what. Hasn't quite been 24 hours, but man, it literally feels like powder coat. I'm eating my words from yesterday. I'm pretty impressed with this stuff. I will say that it doesn't blend like some paint will. If you got some heavy spots, it'll kind of blend in when it dries. This isn't like that. You can see some of the runs, and you can also see where I put it on heavier. But I mean, it's a hub, and I think it looks pretty good. So now, I was excited to get up this morning. Family's still sleeping, because I'm gonna install the accoutrement of the brake system here. Pretty excited about it. All right, so there's step 1. Believe it or not, this was all the work here. Making this adapter bracket a lot harder than you would think to get something that you can replicate, bolt on and off. And then I just utilized a standard Wilwood bracket for the caliper and adapted that to my adapter. which gave me the ability to shim the caliper. I purposely made it shallow so that I could shim the caliper centered. So the next step is the disc and the caliper. Man, I tell you what, when you build something from scratch and it bolts right up finally, that is a good feeling. But there it is, the accoutrement of the whole setup. Smaller discs in the front, bigger discs in the back. And for those of you wondering why, this is a rear engine car, so it's opposite of your normal mindset. This car really needs bigger brakes in the back. And one of the big motivators for me to strip this car down and redo it in the beginning was I hated the brakes. Even a good functioning stock system is just, compared to a modern car, it's not there now. Some people like the old classic cars staying the way they drove. I personally think old classic cars are better when they drive more modern, so that's why I'm doing this. But man, the rest of this is easy. I have one soft line I had to order to connect to the master cylinder.
King of the road, trailer for sailoring. Man, trailer for sailoring. Ain't got no cigarettes, but trailer for sailoring. Give, don't pay no. Trailer for sailoring.
Well, don't need this anymore. Oh my God, he's not about to cut up a stock DeLorean, is he? Yes, I am. Don't need that anymore.